I'm here in Amsterdam for Social Enterprise World Forum 23. This is a conference that brings together leaders in social enterprise from around the world, and I'm really excited to be bringing you some insights and lessons and summaries from what's going on while we're here. And the conference is going to be starting in a couple of days, and it got me thinking about how social enterprises make an impact. And there are a bunch of different ways that social enterprises make impact. They can make it inside their own operations or inside their own organization, and they can make them outside the organization. Let's focus on outside first. So social enterprises can make impact through their ownership. The ownership that leads, that guides, and derives benefit from the organization's success. And we can look at if a beneficiary group owns the social enterprise, then naturally they are going to direct it to create impacts that benefit them. This is what normal corporations do all the time. For-profits, this is their standard way of being. The people who own it make it so that it benefits them. And so if what we do is we shift the ownership to the group that requires the benefits, then naturally they will act in their own self-interest, and they're going to create impacts that benefit their community. You can do that with handing off shares, providing them with the things of ownership, and allowing them to lead and direct the organization and derive those benefits, whether it be the finances or by providing direction to push them into operationalizing impact. And you can also look at splitting ownership in different ways. You can look at co-ops. You can look at splitting ownership between other nonprofits that are impact focused. In that way, locking in who will be receiving benefit and who gets to direct the social enterprise. For example, we've got Diversity Foods in Winnipeg. They are co-owned by the University of Winnipeg Community Renewal Corporation and Seed Winnipeg, a nonprofit that focuses on economic justice and creating social enterprises. You can listen to more about that in podcast number 11 on the Strategy Made Simple podcast. We also have Mother Earth Recycling. It's 100% Indigenous owned, and it is based in one of the most Indigenous neighborhoods in Winnipeg that also happens to be very low income. And so it provides jobs for people who are there, as well as feeding money through the ownership back into the community. And finally, we have other examples like Patagonia that in the last couple of years handed off ownership to a nonprofit trust that is focused on impact. The nonprofit is still controlled by the same family that started Patagonia, and so, or at least was in charge of Patagonia. So it is still vulnerable to the whims of the people in charge, but with the nonprofit owner, there are certain directions and there's more regulatory compliance that's required, so it's harder to change and to make it more self-interested. Instead, it has to follow the direction of the impact-focused nonprofit trust. So other than ownership, externally you can also make impact by sending money. So this is where you get a lot of for-profit companies saying all proceeds going towards X cause. And while the money goes and it does make impact, it is not within the organization itself. One great example of that is the Habitat for Humanity Restore and Habitat for Humanity itself. The Restore is a separate legal entity that is a for-profit that sends up to the maximum Canadian allowed donations to the nonprofit Habitat for Humanity. In this way, they're able to earn as much money as they can through the for-profit structure, while then sending as much money as possible back to Habitat for Humanity to build homes. And you can see more about that in the Business Model Canvas Partners episode on our YouTube channel. So when we're sending money elsewhere, it can be for charitable or other non-profit purposes. Let's look internally to the operations. There are many ways you can turn the operations of a social enterprise into a thing that generates an impact. First, you have, the big example in Winnipeg is social integration work integration social enterprises. These are businesses that exist to hire people who have barriers to employment, who are in some way outside the workforce and have a difficult time entering. They hire them, they train them up, and often they set them up to be recruited by other companies so that they can go and earn more for their families and to build their livelihoods, to integrate them into the workforce. One example is Build in Winnipeg. So they hire and train many Indigenous people or low-income people from their community. They often post 8 jobs at a time and receive 700 applications. And they have to try to figure out who they can accept to train up and then provide a job so that they can go and do the construction renovation work and then quite often go and get another job in another business that does the same work and earn better money there. In that way, lifting their family and lifting their community through earned income. Internally, we also have the practices and processes that you use inside the social enterprise. Fools and Horses is the first featured social enterprise on the podcast number 1. And their goal was to provide a living wage to all of their employees in a cafe, to have as many recyclable or compostable elements, the cups, the cutlery, everything that the customer walks away with, to be compostable or recyclable. They also wanted to make sure that they were treating the fair trade, that they were buying fair trade coffee as much as possible. In every element of the operation, they were trying to be as impact focused as possible. Now, this came with challenges, and especially it affected the cost of everything. It's very difficult to run a social enterprise that is trying to do so many impacts, and so they ran into cost issues where it was difficult to keep the organization running while keeping those impacts in place. So you can hear more about that journey in podcast number 1. And finally, for internal operations, Embers Staffing Solutions is a Vancouver or BC-based employment organization. They look to do temporary placements for people in the construction industry primarily. They have a list of positions that open up every day, and then they have a pool of workers who call in 4 a.m. every day to see where they're going to be going to work. And sometimes this leads to them getting permanent positions in these after getting these temp jobs. So they're able to work within these organizations, they're able to work with these companies, and then they can prove their worth. They can show the value that they provide to the organization, to the company, and it often leads to, or it can lead to, a more permanent position. In that way, Embers Staffing Solution gets through its operations, creates an impact for those that are facing barriers to employment, and then provides them a space to train up, to get the skills they need, and then to earn jobs. Finally, we can also look at the product or service that is being offered and sold. A great example is Burn Manufacturing. They provide more efficient wood stoves in Africa. So the traditional method of cooking is over a stone fire pit, and then they put a grill on top and cook their food there. This often leads to lots of smoke within the home, and it costs a lot in terms of the wood, the raw material, to create the fires. Burn has created a more efficient wood stove, so customers have to spend less on fuel, there's less smoke in the home, and so it creates a threefold impact through selling its product, just because its product is that much better for the beneficiaries and for the customer group. It creates the environmental impact of less wood is being burned, the health benefit of less smoke in the home for the family and for the children, and finally, it also provides a financial benefit in that these often very poor families that are living from wood bundle to wood bundle, they spend about a third as much on wood. Another example of benefit through product or service is low-income housing. If somebody's able to get a place to live and then is able to spend less on their housing, it can often make a huge financial benefit as well as creating the benefit of somebody having a place to live. And finally, Aravind Eye Hospitals is a great example of the service leading to direct impact, because they change lives by repairing cataracts, by doing cataract surgery to repair people's eyesight, where in an area of India where if somebody is lower income and doesn't have the ability to work, their entire livelihood is gone and their family must spend to support them. In that way, Aravind Eye Hospitals create that impact by providing the services at low cost or free for people who can't afford it, by charging appropriately for those who can afford to pay. You can hear more about that in the Business Model Canvas video on channels, also on this YouTube channel. So within that, we've explored several different kinds of impact, or ways to create impact, both inside an organization through its operations or its product or service, as well as outside the organization by either handing off ownership to the appropriate people who need to provide direction or benefit from the organization, or by sending money to nonprofits and charities that can provide the social impact. And it's important to note that these are not mutually exclusive. Often organizations do multiple of these. The lines are not solid. They're very blurry and you can end up doing more than one. And often it ends up working a little bit better if you have more than one. I'm Matthew Rempel. I'm here for Social Enterprise World Forum, and I hope you're looking forward to hearing more about it.